Okay, let's play a little guessing game, shall we? Can you name the sixth largest river on Earth in terms of volume? That's the amount of water that flows through a waterway. The first couple of rivers are easy to list. Number 1, of course, is the Amazon River in South America. Then we have the Congo in Africa and the Ganges in India. Feel free to name all the rivers on the planet. You won't get any closer to the answer. Why? Because this river is not on the surface, but underneath the waves of the Black Sea. In 2010, a team of scientists discovered this river while studying the Bosphorus Strait in Turkey. Sonar scanning revealed a channel at the bottom of the Black Sea. The channel had water flowing through it. It turned out that at places, it's 115 feet deep. That's 3 times as tall as your average telephone pole. This flow of water acts like a real river. It has rapids and waterfalls, and its volume is 350 times greater than that of the River Thames in London. Talk about a strong undercurrent. If it was a surface river, it would really be in the top 10. Bad news for the Madeira River in Bolivia and Brazil, the present number 6. But how did this underwater river form? The answer lies in the amazing features of the Black Sea. It gets its water from 2 main sources. The first are the rivers that flow into it, like the Danube, Dnieper, and Don. Lot of D's there. But more importantly, they are all freshwater waterways. On the other side, quite literally, there is the Mediterranean, and it's salty, like a lot. When this salt water gets inside the Black Sea, it goes straight to the bottom. You see, fresh water is lighter than salt water. This creates stratification. It's a fancy term that simply means that the 2 types of water don't mix together. Salt water has a higher density, so it drops right down to the bottom. If you want to see how that works, you can do an experiment at home. Pour mineral water into 1 cup and salt water into another. Table salt will do. Then put a grape in each cup. You'll see how it immediately sinks to the bottom of the cup filled with fresh water. The grape will stay afloat in the cup filled with salt water. The same thing is happening inside the Black Sea. But there is another side to this phenomenon. The upper layer of water is rich in oxygen. This means it can support life. The bottom layer, however, is anoxic. Yep, you guessed it. This means there is no oxygen at the bottom. But this isn't a bad thing. Because of this trait of the Black Sea, shipwrecks are able to survive for centuries. Oxygen decomposes wood. And from what material did the ancient people make their ships? That's correct, timber. Recently, in 2018, scientists discovered the oldest Greek shipwreck on Earth. The merchant ship lies more than a mile deep at the bottom of the sea. Experts estimate that the vessel is 2,400 years old. The wreck was valuable for historians to study all the elements of ancient ship construction. From the mast to the rowing benches, it's all intact. The wreck lies some 50 miles off the coast of Bulgaria, but no one has seen it in person. Explorers sent a deep-sea ROV, or remotely operated vehicle, to film the wreckage. It was impossible for a diver to go down. But the Black Sea doesn't look that huge on a map. Could it be that deep? Oh yes, it's way deeper than people think. You could stack 6 Empire State Buildings at the deepest point of the Black Sea, around 7,257 feet. This inland sea isn't the only place on Earth where researchers have discovered shipwrecks and underwater rivers. One of the largest channels running along the ocean floor lies off the coast of South America. It runs from the mouth of the mighty Amazon and into the Atlantic Ocean. Studying underwater rivers isn't an easy task. The depth and the strong currents make it impossible to send in divers. Even the equipment for underwater research has to be sturdy. Otherwise, the current will just wash it away. That's why the underwater river in the Black Sea was ideal for scientists to explore. Earth's oceans and seas are powerful. But, lucky for us, there are places where divers can admire underwater rivers. Ever heard of a cenote? Sounds Spanish. Well, that's because it is. Cenotes are underground caves. They form after the limestone above collapses, revealing the groundwater under them. The term cenote is associated with the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Ancient Maya used them as water sources. In the Mayan language, the word cenote meant sacred well. Researchers estimate there are some 10,000 cenotes spread across the Yucatan Peninsula. You can also find them in other places, such as Cuba and Australia. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but unofficially, the most beautiful cenote is located just south of the town of Tulum in Mexico. The name reflects the cave's divine beauty, Cenote Angelita. But people don't visit this cenote to go swimming. Its bottom is much more interesting. A scuba tank is all you need to finally admire an underwater river firsthand. The waters are dark and foggy, so divers use powerful flashlights. After a 100-foot dive, a marvelous sight appears: an underwater river with trees along its banks. Some of them even have green leaves, just like any other water flow on dry land. But it's not really a river. Here comes the fascinating part. Remember how saltwater and freshwater don't mix? Well, the river the divers see is actually a thick layer of fog between the two types of water. 3 feet of hydrogen sulfates to be exact. This is the compound that water processing plants use to remove chlorine from drinking water. The substance is so heavy that the fog it produces moves independently from the surrounding water, and it creates an illusion that a river is flowing underwater. But there are other real rivers that play tricks on you. Take, for example, the Mystery River in Indiana. It's the longest underground river in the United States. Explorers discovered the river and its cave system, Blue Spring Caverns, in the 19th century. Nearly 3 miles of the river are navigable. Isn't that impressive? You can book a boat tour on a river that you can't even see. But the most mysterious river on the planet is the Saraswati River in India. The coolest part about it is that it doesn't exist. It was an alleged river only mentioned in ancient literature. For centuries, people thought that it was just a myth. Then satellite images showed that it might be real. Ancient texts spoke of a major confluence of 3 mighty rivers, the Ganges, Yamuna, and Saraswati. The first 2 are visible today, but where's the third one? That's what scientists decided to find out. Images from an American satellite showed the presence of underground water in the area. Until then, researchers thought that these were paleo channels. This simply means that water flowed through them a long time ago. But, to their surprise, it appeared that there was still water inside these channels. Scientists estimated that the Saraswati River flowed above the ground some 5,000 years ago. But it didn't dry up completely. It just went underground, some 200 feet below the ground. Local experts believe that the river still slowly flows into the sea. The Saraswati River got hidden under the desert sand. This was a natural process, but many rivers have been forced underground because of human activity. In London, England, several dozen small and medium-sized rivers now flow under the ground. Maps from the 19th century still show them as rivers, but today they only exist in the names of the streets that were built above them, such as Fleet Street. The same thing happened in New York, but this doesn't mean that these streams have disappeared for good. When engineers want to rebuild or modify a building, they still consult city maps from centuries ago. No one wants a long-lost brook to flood their basement. The sea, this unrelenting water beast, has been defying all attempts to tame it for centuries. Many ships driven by the wind have gone through the harshest parts of the world. Some have survived the struggle with the sea, and many have come off second best. It's the year 1834. A ship called the Pilgrim is setting a course to sail from California to Boston. The journey will venture around South America and then past Cape Horn of Chile. Richard signs up as a merchant seaman aboard the Pilgrim. This is his first voyage at sea. The crew tells Richard stories of the Drake Passage off Cape Horn, a route that's legendary for its dangers. Countless ships and sailors have disappeared in those waters. Since Cape Horn's discovery in 1526, it's quickly become known to all those that have sailed around it as the ultimate test of any mariner's skill and of any ship's strength. Those that have survived the journey call Cape Horn a sailor's nightmare. Jack, the helmsman, a salty veteran, steers the ship towards this most dangerous of all routes. Jack has been aboard the Pilgrim since it was first commissioned in 1825. He's passed by the Horn many times, each time learning a different lesson from the tests provided by the sea. The Pilgrim has been refitted since its past voyage a year ago. Richard values Jack's experience, given that it's his first journey at sea. Jack assures Richard of his confidence in the Pilgrim, even though it's just a small wooden brig with 2 masts. Jack's aware that wooden vessels are gradually becoming outdated, replaced by new steam-powered ships. But Jack prefers the maneuverability of the Pilgrim and would take it over the steel ships any day. Richard is excited to be aboard. There's so much to explore in life as a merchant seaman, but the guy struggles to acquire his sea legs on the boat. Forceful winds make the Pilgrim move faster, providing Richard with a quick introduction to life at sea. At the same time, nothing can prepare him for what is to be experienced at Cape Horn. It's the southernmost point of land before Antarctica. The gap between the icy continent and Cape Horn holds the infamous Drake Passage, approximately 700 miles between Cape Horn and the Antarctic Peninsula. Strong winds provide an uninterrupted, steadfast journey toward the Horn. But, as Jack tells Richard, the winds are more concentrated at the Drake Passage. They create a funneling effect, becoming stronger and more unpredictable. Richard is unsure of what this might mean for the Pilgrim, but understands that there's no easier route to travel around South America. A few days pass. The Pilgrim sails by the many islands that make up the western coast of Chile. Although the sea has been relatively calm, Richard continues to deal with his lack of sea legs. His movements are still not very graceful. The constant, ever-swaying deck rises and falls, and Richard finds it hard to get used to the motion. Random large waves hit the Pilgrim from every angle. The ship is quickly approaching Cape Horn. Richard looks towards great thunderous black clouds in the distance. "Welcome to the Horn," Jack says, half laughing. A wry smile upon his face soon disappears. The man gets serious, knowing what awaits them all. Stronger winds start blowing the sails as the crew scrambles to hang onto the ropes. Richard desperately sets to adjust the aft sails, adjusting for the constant change in strong southerly winds. Jack holds firm at the helm, knowing the importance of his role. He's wary of the swell. It can build very quickly the further south they travel. It's crucial the Pilgrim doesn't venture too close to the Horn when they approach. The great darkness that was in the distance is now all around them, filling the sky in every direction. Blackened clouds throw rain and hail down at the crew as they try to resist the enraged weather. Jack is directed by the captain at the helm, changing the direction of the vessel. The temperature has dropped significantly. Barely keeping the water from his eyes, he turns toward the port side bow to provide his face a brief break from the torment of the wind. Looking out into the distance, the man sees the Horn standing alone, surrounded by mist. It's a haunting sight. He steers the Pilgrim along the face of the Horn, the distance getting shorter. The waves shrink in height since the depths become shallower. But these waves are much steeper, and their angle can cause more damage to the wooden vessel. Jack's unsure how much of these waves the Pilgrim can take before the hull is breached. Richard, still posted at the aft sails, watches the water and icebergs floating by. He's unsure how large they actually are, since they're mostly hidden underwater. But he knows to alert Jack if any get too close. Just one iceberg hitting the Pilgrim will be all that the hull can withstand. Dutifully, he watches over the side and into the distance. Icebergs aren't the only thing to look out for. Rogue waves are common in these seas as well. The connecting Antarctic and Pacific Oceans, mixed with stormy weather, form waves together. This creates much larger rogue waves. Such waves have been known to reach up to 100 feet tall. They can destroy most vessels in their path. It'll surely be the end of the Pilgrim if it comes across a rogue wave. Strong currents adjust the route of the Pilgrim, as though the Horn is trying to lure the ship toward its rocky shallows. Slowly, they are getting pulled closer toward the Horn. Jack is fighting the current at the helm. Spinning the wheel, he strains his body as much as he can. Grunting, he plunges the wheel from the port side to starboard and back again. The captain keeps yelling directions. To a novice, they're extremely confusing. But Jack, a hardened veteran, continues to interpret the directions with ease, steering to readjust their course away from the Horn. The captain orders Richard to assess the hull below the decks. With the level of pounding the Drake Passage has provided so far, it's surely harmed the ship in some way. Richard runs to the deck as another sailor yells something at him, but the noise of the sea makes it difficult to hear. A wave hits the side, flowing onto the deck. Richard manages to hang on to the mast before he's almost swept overboard. The entire front deck seems to be underwater. Hanging on as the water rolls off the sides of the ship and waiting for it to clear, Richard watches the Horn slowly go past. Still, it beckons toward the Pilgrim, as though asking for its dues from the crew. The currents are still pulling the ship, while the storm is raging on, with no end of the struggle in sight. The storm is growing ever larger and fiercer. Richard gathers himself to head below and assess the damage. After a slow descent to the lower decks, Richard can finally look over the hull from the ship's quarters. There's no damage from what he can gather. But he's shocked by the depth of the water inside. It's now at waist depth. Cups, amongst other things, float in the water. Even inside the ship, the guy can't escape the waves. Unable to make sense of it all, he stands frozen, listening to the almighty power of Mother Nature outside. The sea roars even more wildly, waves constantly thudding against the hull. It sounds like a somber drumbeat, a slow countdown to the demise of the Pilgrim. Richard forces himself back to the terrors of the above decks, grasping onto the rails to carefully walk the slippery stairs. He leaves the disturbing creaks of the wooden decks. They're soon replaced with the strained sounds of the ropes, the yells of other sailors, and the deafening roar of the sea crashing all around him. Jack is at the helm, focused on his role, still fighting the wind and the waves, even with the addition of ice and frost. It seems that the world around him has set its heart to distract the man from his duty, but Jack pushes on determinedly. For 9 days, the Pilgrim fights the constant changes in stormy weather, facing all kinds of obstacles, but the ship manages to make it through. As they leave the storm behind, the crew sets their course north for their final destination. The sight of the sun peeking through the dark clouds is the most relieving thing Richard has ever experienced. Unfortunately, Richard lost his rations at some stage during the storm. At sea, if your rations are lost, it's your own bad luck. Luckily, Jack is kind enough to share some of his.
Antarctica. It was once a green land full of dinosaurs, but now it's a frozen continent bigger than that of the US that doesn't belong to anyone. It isn't hard to find. Wherever you go, just go south until you get to the big icy thing at the south pole of our planet. It lies within the Antarctic Circle, and it's the largest single mass of ice on Earth. The continent is bigger than the US and even bigger than all of Europe. And still, Antarctica was officially discovered recently. Scientists hadn't known of its existence until 1820. After the discovery, it took another 2 decades to confirm it was a whole new continent, and a few more decades after that to decide on a name. In Antarctica, anti means the opposite. So Antarctica literally means the opposite of the Arctic. Now, even before scientists discovered the land, ancient Greeks already theorized that there must be a southern continent to balance out the Arctic in the north. Also, some scientists who studied Polynesian artwork and oral history believe that Polynesians found the continent over a millennia before the Europeans did. Anyways, Today we all know of this icy land at the South Pole. Because of its location, there are just 2 seasons there, summer and winter, and both last 6 months. In summer, it's a bit warmer, and the continent exists in pure daylight. And in winter, it's dark all day long. 98% of Antarctica is ice. This continent alone stores 60% of the planet's fresh water. And yet, despite all those water reserves, Antarctica is the biggest desert in the world. By definition, a desert is an area with sparse vegetation and little snow or rain. Notice that plenty of sand isn't a necessary condition here, even though the continent does have some sand and even sand dunes. It also gets a lot of wind. Antarctica is the windiest continent on Earth, and wind speeds can reach 200 miles per hour. That's even faster than hurricane winds. The little snow the land gets never melts. It just builds up over time, for centuries and millennia. So there's a thick ice layer there. This makes Antarctica full of hidden secrets. There's a whole new world underneath its ice. For example, there are a lot of mountains on the continent that are like 9,000 feet tall. It's taller than 3 Burj Khalifas stacked on top of each other, if we must, and that's currently the tallest skyscraper in the world. But we don't see all those mountains because they're all hidden under the ice sheet that's almost 16,000 feet thick. There's also a lake down there, beneath over 11,000 feet of snow. The lake is called Lake Vostok, named after Vostok Research Station, under which it's located. Originally, it was just a hypothesis. Over a century ago, a scientist suggested that the huge pressure created by tons of ice could decrease the melting point of ice in the lowest layers of the ice sheet, creating liquid water, which could form a lake. He didn't prove his ideas in his lifetime, but others continued his work and confirmed that this theory was true. There's also a canyon in Antarctica, hidden underneath huge masses of snow too. It's deeper than the Grand Canyon we have in Arizona. There is a mountain range that divides the continent into 2 parts, East Antarctica and West Antarctica. The western part of the continent is experiencing higher temperatures and is starting to melt. If West Antarctica melts and releases its stored water, it will raise the average global sea level by about 16 feet. That will be enough for some cities all over the world to completely disappear. Perhaps the first to turn into a water world will be Thailand's capital, Bangkok, which is just 5 feet above sea level. Then it will be Amsterdam in the Netherlands, followed by Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, Cardiff in the UK, and New Orleans in the US. People do a lot of work in Antarctica now, residing there for many months at a time to study this mystery of a continent. Over the years, even a few children were born there. But it's not a country, and the land doesn't belong to anyone. It's governed by the Antarctic Treaty System, an agreement of peaceful research and collaboration that suspends all territorial claims. It was first signed by 12 nations, and now there are 59 supporters, half of whom have decision-making powers. The continent is occupied all year round by researchers from all over the world. There are about 5,000 people living there in summer and about 1,000 in winter. Yet no one is a permanent resident there. People come and go, and the scientists take turns spending time there. The average yearly temperature there is negative 30 degrees. But there was a time when Antarctica was about as warm as Melbourne, Australia is today. It was about 40 to 50 million years ago. I wasn't around then. But the continent had green forests and dinosaurs roaming its land, chilling in the sun in a 63-degree Fahrenheit environment. That was before penguins. In our age, it's so cold that you won't even find any trees or bushes in Antarctica, just the snow. The only plants that can thrive in such extreme temperatures are lichens, moss, and algae. People can't stand such freezing conditions for lengthy periods of time either, so the continent has never had any indigenous population. Well, that is, if we don't count penguins, seals, whales, and a few other types of birds that live there now. Antarctica's fauna is the scariest and least diverse on the planet because only a few organisms can withstand its harsh conditions and because non-natives aren't allowed to be brought there. So, if you decide to travel to Antarctica with your cat, well, you can't. Hey, I don't make the rules. But those few species that live on the South Pole totally own the place. There are no more than 5,000 people there and around 20 million penguins. They are a kind of settlers, though. Penguins' first ancestors lived in Australia and New Zealand. There are still a few penguin species there, including the smallest penguin on Earth that is just 1 foot tall. Still, most of the penguins migrated to Antarctica at some point, possibly because they were attracted by the greater food supply there. It's not the cold that made them like the land. It turns out, most penguins leave the continent when the summer ends. The only ones that stay there are male emperor penguins, and they do it to warm and protect eggs left by their mates. But where do all the other penguins go? At first, it was a big mystery even to scientists. But then they attached some tiny location devices to the legs of a few of these animals and figured it out. Penguins go to live in the southern oceans while it's too cold in Antarctica. None of them go ashore for half a year until they get back to the continent. When they come back, it's when those eggs, left for male penguins to nurture, start hatching, and so penguin families can be together when it happens. Penguins eat different fish, and the ocean is full of those despite its cold temperature. In some areas, water can reach below freezing temperatures because it's salty. But fish don't freeze there because they have antifreeze proteins in their bodies. Then there are also about 1 million seals in Antarctica. They like fish too, and they can hold their breath underwater for 2 hours. They see way better underwater than in the bright light of the day, and they also use their whiskers to locate food. Their breathing holes in the ice can freeze while seals are away, and they must use their teeth to make a new one. Seals can even sleep underwater and then resurface occasionally to get some air without waking up. I can appreciate that.
If you're a fan of Dr. Pimple Popper, you're probably freaking out right now, itching to squeeze out every little blackhead from those lip contours. But this is actually a hill formation that you can find in Garb, Sudan. Knowing that perhaps makes it all the more creepy because it looks like the crack in the middle is swallowing up everything around it. This black hole scenario brings to mind our next stop, Vostok Island. This eerie spot is a 59-acre coral atoll situated in the southwestern Pacific Ocean, about 400 miles northwest of Tahiti. If you check it out on Google Earth today, it looks like it's been totally blacked out, sparking all sorts of wild theories. People keep saying that this place is some top-secret base, or even a fictional island straight out of Lost. But what we see here is actually just a dense, dark green forest made up of Pisonia trees. Since nobody lives there and hardly anyone ever visits, the island is pretty much untouched by humans. This massive star, or mandala, is situated just outside Beatty, Nevada. It has got the internet all puzzled, with people trying to figure out if it's evidence of some kind of extraterrestrial activity. To add to the mystery, this spot is right by the Tonopah Test Range, which is also known as the famous Area 52. Despite its creepiness, it's probably just one of the thousands of crop circles that gained fame after Google Earth came along. This spiral formation right here is also located in Nevada, and it definitely looks like another chilling crop circle. But things get even stranger if you use the Street View option. As you zoom in closer and closer, you'll notice that it's made up of carefully arranged rocks. This labyrinth, so to speak, is part of an open-air museum situated in the ghost town of Rhyolite. And if that's not creepy enough, take a look around and you'll see dozens of eerie men in white cloaks. Despite their lifelike appearance, these silhouettes are actually statues from an installation created by a Belgian artist in the 80s. Even stranger than stumbling upon a large circle on the ground is finding a bunch of them. Our next location in Wyoming is filled with peculiar circle structures to the point where it's hard to count them all. During the 20th century, this U.S. state shifted from a farming economy to an industrial one, dominated by the extraction of oil, gas, and coal. So, these circles are likely remnants of a tank farm. I mean, places where oil storage tanks used to be located. If you want to avoid nightmares, I highly recommend not searching for the mausoleum of Emil Becker in Poland. If you happen to find it by using the Street View mode, prepare yourself to face an abandoned place with the most terrifying sculpture there is. Oh, the creeps. Keeping on the spooky side, let's head to an isolated corner of Kazakhstan, where you can find a pentagram etched into the Earth's surface. This formation is huge, measuring roughly 1,200 feet in diameter. Before you jump to conclusions about this formation being related to some kind of underworld deity worship, it's worth noting that the pentagram actually turns out to be the outline of a park designed in the shape of a star. The star shape is marked by roadways, which are now lined with trees, making the star shape even more distinct in aerial photos. You can spot this peculiar symbol from quite a distance. At first glance, it might even resemble an otherworldly alphabet, as if a highly intelligent civilization is trying to send us an alert message. But this mystery is already solved. We are in De Hoge Veluwe, a Dutch national park located in the province of Gelderland. And these lines are actually part of the park's logo. Search for these coordinates to find what looks like a land formation straight out of an extraterrestrial landscape, or perhaps a set from Avatar. This place, located in Inner Mongolia, China, is believed to be a granite mine. But it's a bit of a mystery why it has such a striking blue tone on Google Earth. If you check it out on Microsoft Bing Maps, for example, the same location appears in a much more natural tone. In the Australian outback lies a massive geoglyph known as the Maori Man. Discovered in the late 90s, it appears to represent an indigenous Australian man hunting with a boomerang or stick. The figure stretches for more than 2 miles in length and about 1.6 miles wide. It has deep furrows carved into the ground, which adds to the complexity of its formation and origin. Despite efforts to uncover its purpose, its origin is still a mystery. This is Desert Breath, located in the Sahara. Like many things you have seen in this video, this formation also sparks speculation about it being created by extraterrestrial beings. But a quick Google search clears up that mystery. It turns out this is an art installation created by a group of 3 Greek artists back in 1997. They went all out, moving around a whopping 280,000 square feet of sand and even creating a large pool in the middle of it. Egypt still holds many mysteries, and you can explore them yourself with Google Earth. That's how some people stumbled upon this striking triangular-shaped plateau and immediately jumped to the conclusion that they discovered a hidden pyramid. However, experts quickly dashed their hopes. They believe there's no plausible explanation for a pyramid to exist in this area, located 8 miles west of the Nile Valley edge in Upper Egypt. This discovery is likely nothing more than a hill that has suffered the effects of erosion, combined with a heavy dose of wishful thinking. In some cases, nature itself is responsible for creating frightening sculptures, like the Badlands Guardian in Alberta, Canada. If you look at it from above, you'll notice not 1, but 2 human heads emerging from the landscape. These gigantic beings were sculpted by rainwater erosion on layers of clay-rich soil. Ironically, additional human-made structures give the impression that this one is wearing wired headphones. It seems that deserts are a prime spot for discovering strange images on Google Earth. So our next stop is China. In the Gobi Desert, you'll come across zigzagging white lines that look kind of random. The first challenge for armchair experts was figuring out what these structures were made of, as it's hard to tell if they're painted on or dug into the landscape. There's still a lot of speculation about it on the internet. But the most plausible explanation is that this structure is used for calibrating satellites. This way, satellite cameras can focus on these large grids to orient themselves in space. Check out this intact plane that seems to have sunk beneath the ocean off the coast of Crooked Island, Bahamas. Some viral videos claim it's a crashed plane belonging to the infamous Pablo Escobar. The truth is that something lying on the bottom of the ocean can't be that visible, so it's more likely that it's a plane that was actually flying when Google captured these images. However, there is a strong belief that Pablo Escobar did have a plane that crashed nearby, but it was in another part of the Bahamas known as Norman's Cay. You can still spot it in shallow turquoise waters. Just search for Norman's Cay sunken plane, And there it is. If you're convinced that extraterrestrials are already among us, then go ahead and type in these coordinates on Google Earth. Explore the area using Street View, and wow, what is it? Of course, we're not talking about visitors from other planets, but this shadow of a gigantic creature still gives me the creeps. Turns out, it's just a person lugging around one of those 360-degree Street View cameras tucked away in a Trekker backpack. So hey, if you take a good look around Google Earth, you might stumble upon more of these elongated necked beings walking around the globe.
As with many other crazy internet discoveries, it all kickstarted on Reddit with a wild post about wicked forest designs. Just take a gander on Google Earth and hit up the history tool to watch epic transformations from barren valleys to densely populated areas teeming with lush green tree plantations. Currently, Uruguay has approximately 2.7 million acres of artificial forests. Just to put that into perspective, it would take you around 15 to 20 minutes to walk across 1 acre, depending on how fast your pace is. You could spend a lifetime just walking around those artificial Uruguayan forests. But how did they emerge, and how did they reach this scale? So there's this process called afforestation, where trees are planted in previously non-forested areas. This initiative was implemented as part of a larger plan to increase the country's forest cover, resulting in Uruguay now exporting an impressive $2 billion worth of wood pulp annually. Despite native forests only covering 5% of the country, these artificial forests occupy a significant 6%. Another cool thing about these forests is that they have special trees that originally couldn't be found in Uruguay. It was decided to plant eucalyptus trees there, as they show impressive results in terms of how fast they grow. A tree can get through a whole cycle, from a little plant to one ready to be harvested, in as little as 10 years. Yeah, not as impressive as bamboo, that grows a couple of feet a day, but still faster than a common Uruguay tree called the Tree of Heaven, which takes about 25 years to get full-sized. By the way, it's considered pretty fast too. Now this funky forest in Japan is literally turning heads. In the Miyazaki Prefecture, there's a group of Japanese cedar trees that are causing a buzz with their unique concentric circles reaching toward the sky. A recent aerial photo captured these crop circles, and now everyone is scratching their heads trying to figure out how they came to be. But fear not, there's no extraterrestrial invasion involved. It turns out this cool formation was actually a carefully planned project from almost half a century ago. Back in 1973, researchers planted these trees in specific radial increments to create these mesmerizing circles. 50 years ago, Google Earth was nowhere around. But looking at that forest, you might think that the Japanese have been preparing to boast their forest on the internet for half a century. Now, what's even more fascinating is how the trees grew in a curved shape, spreading out in an unexpected way. Originally meant to be harvested after 5 years, there's now talk of preserving this circular forest because of all the newfound interest. Now, look at this portal in the forest. There's no way it could have emerged naturally, right? If your first guess was that it was a piece of contemporary art, you were right. So this portal is located in southern Estonia, and it was created by Finnish artist, this guy. This portal is far from being his only creation. He's had other crazy projects too. Like, he once sailed to Estonia in a boat made of bark. He also chopped down a forest plot, sorted all the materials for months, and then made an installation the same size as the original plot. There was even a time when he cut a line in ice with a chainsaw and ended up in a freezing swamp. This guy definitely knows how to surprise people. Most of his works are nature-related, so you probably shouldn't be surprised that this forest portal is yet another creation of his. What do you think the artist wanted to convey through this portal? Let us know in the comments. Trees are something that are definitionally straight, right? Well, not as long as you're in the crooked forest in Poland. Near the ground, the trees there bend sharply to the north, then magically straighten back up after a little detour of 3 to 9 feet. It's like they're doing the limbo, but with trees. The mystery of how these trees ended up swerving like they're on a roller coaster is still unsolved. Some think humans might have intervened to create some funky furniture or boat-building material, while others blame it on a wild snowstorm. Nobody knows for sure. Regardless of how they got this way, the Crooked Forest is a hot spot for tourists and nature lovers. If you ever come to Poland, make sure to visit this nature's wonder. Welcome to the Goblin Forest, a magical section of East Egmont that will make you feel like you've stepped into a fairy tale. This enchanting forest, also known as the Kamahiwa, is famous for the abundance of gnarly kamahi trees that give the whole place an eerie yet stunning vibe. As you hike through the Goblin Forest, you'll be surprised by lush greenery, moss-covered trees, and falling rays of sun that create a truly enchanting atmosphere. It's a photographer's dream come true. Now, while you might not find real goblins or mythical creatures in the forest, yeah, I know, it's a bummer, you will still encounter a variety of native bird species. Birdwatchers will be in heaven spotting all the feathered friends flitting about, and all that alliteration. Plus, if you're lucky, you might even catch a glimpse of glowworms lighting up the trails. With a network of well-maintained hiking trails suitable for all fitness levels, the Goblin Forest is the perfect destination for adventurers looking for a magical experience in nature. So, grab your hiking boots and get ready to explore this enchanted forest of wonders. Monteverde Cloud Forest in Costa Rica is not your typical forest adventure. Think of high-flying suspension bridges and trails above the treetops. On foggy days, you can wander through misty clouds for a mystical vibe. This nature reserve is called a cloud forest, and it's a real scientific definition. Cloud forests differ from your average ones in several aspects. First, they're usually evergreen forests that are like tropical oases, with a constant veil of low-level clouds covering the canopy. The next thing that's different is moss. It's so abundant there that these places are sometimes even nicknamed mossy forests. Going back to Monteverde Cloud Forest, however, it's more impressive if you visit it on a foggy day. But even on clear days, the views of the lush greenery are absolutely stunning. Now, if a regular forest sounds a bit boring to you, our planet has something more fun to offer. How about an underwater forest? Whether you're a local Oregonian or just passing through, Clear Lake is definitely a dive spot you've got to check out. True to its name, Clear Lake lives up to its reputation, with crystal-clear waters boasting up to 100 feet of visibility. It's like swimming in a massive pool. But brace yourself, because it's a chilly 38 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. Nah, I wouldn't venture in there. It's more adapted for penguins, I guess. Well, never mind. This lake is special because of its history. It was formed over 3,000 years ago by volcanic activity that redirected a river, preserving ancient trees that you can still see standing tall underwater today. There's this section known as underwater forest, where you can see ancient trees deep down. An underwater forest walk sounds fancy, doesn't it? And in Madagascar, there's not a forest, but an avenue of trees. But the trees are so majestic, this avenue can rival with the coolest actual forest. I'm talking about these awesome, gigantic baobab trees. Picture this, an 850-foot stretch of road lined with 20 to 25 massive baobabs, towering at about 100 feet tall. In terms of height, it's as if this alley was packed with many Rio's Christ the Redeemer statues. Even a 6-foot guy would feel insecure there. And if you venture just 4 miles away, you'll find the baobab amaru, 2 baobabs that grew twisted together like a love story. Legend has it that they represent an impossible love between 2 young villagers who dreamt of a life together. Now they stand there, intertwined for eternity. Would you like a professional stylist to fold your luggage, a private chef to cook meals just for you, and an entire plane to transport your TV set that didn't fit in your private jet? That's pretty much the everyday travel reality for the top 0.1% of U.S. earners who made around $3 million per year in 2022. Compare that to the regular salary of a working American of around $60,000. And then there's the top 1% who made around $800,000 the same year. If you want to travel like the richest people in the world, forget about chilling at one luxury hotel with shampoo made of gold for 2 weeks. The latest trend in upscale traveling is surf and turf. Rich guests spend a week on a sleek yacht after staying at a luxury hotel, or the other way around. Boat sales have surged in recent years, and the rich love to charter sailboats for $25,000 a week to as much as $90,000. It's a great way to get away from the common folk, you know. Everything is pre-planned by their travel agents, so they don't have to worry about a thing. The ultra-wealthy can often opt for private islands or buy out entire hotels. For instance, a villa on a private island off the Cannes coast in France will cost you around $290,000 a week. It's in high demand, a reasonable price to pay for the absence of neighbors or traffic. And if you do miss the hustle and bustle at some point, you can always hop on a speedboat and dance the night away at one of the luxurious beach clubs. In 2023, Greece became the top destination for the richest 1% of travelers. Paros Island was the most mentioned new favorite. Italian Sicily lost its charm to them because it's overvisited by the White Lotus fans. And it's not just about the Four Seasons-operated San Domenico Palace, where the show is based, but the entire island. For winter fun, there's always Aspen and ski towns in the European wonderland, like Switzerland and France. They have exclusive hotels, Michelin-starred restaurants, high-end shops, and chalets that look richer and more luxurious than an average family house. If there's no natural snow, the artificial snow system solves the problem. Some of the best hotels have direct access to lifts that take guests to the main skiing slopes. For those who aren't fans of the European resorts, there are always the Seychelles, where you can rent a villa for about $11,000 per night at a private island resort. George and Amal Clooney like to come here. Those who don't find it cool or exclusive enough go to Antarctica by private jet from Cape Town. The trip that lasts less than 24 hours costs $195,000. Richard Branson prefers to take his vacations to a private Necker Island, is part of the British Virgin Islands, and has some beautiful wildlife around it to explore. Guests rent the whole place for $80,000 per night. There's enough room for 34 people, but not all billionaires like to share, you know. People who are among the world's richest like to be at events where they can meet like-fortuned ones. Events like the World Economic Forum in Davos, where a standard steak will cost you $150 and a drink will be $40. Then there are horse races, Miami or Singapore yacht shows, or Dubai International Boat Show. For those who love movies or showing off their lavish dresses, the Sundance Film Festival in Utah, the Cannes Film Festival in France, or Venice International Film Festival in Italy could be good options. Sports lovers travel to events like the US Open Golf Tournament and other golf cups, the Wimbledon Tennis Tournament in the UK, the Melbourne Cup in Australia, or the Monaco Grand Prix for those who love speed and expensive cars. Those who can't live without style and like to be trendsetters don't miss fashion weeks in New York, London, Milan, and Paris. For music and crazy luxurious building lovers, there are always opera balls, like the one in Vienna, Austria, or La Scala Opera House opening night in Milan, Italy. And then, of course, there are special events like birthdays. When she was turning 22, billionaire Kylie Jenner rented a super yacht for over $1 million per week. An average person would have to save up for years to rent this vessel, even for one day. Okie dokie, so they need to find a way to get to their deluxe point B, right? Well, more and more people opt for private jets. You can fly at any time, even during restrictions on commercial air travel, to any place. And you won't have to choose between chicken or pasta when the flight attendant finally reaches your seat, 35D. There are around 22,000 business aircraft worldwide, and the number is only going up. Most of these jets are in the US, and Brazil takes the second place. Germany is the leader in Europe and only ranks 5th on the global list. Now, if for some reason they aren't traveling to their destination by a private jet and decide to share first class with other passengers, they'll at least need to ship their luggage instead of taking it on the plane with them. The luggage of the wealthy gets picked up from their door and awaits them at the luxurious suite or yacht on the other side of the journey. And if they want it to be done within one day, they need to pay hundreds of dollars for one bag. By the way, you don't expect them to pack their bags all by themselves, do you? It's much easier to hire someone for thousands of dollars to go through all that trouble. A professional stylist picks all the clothes that will look picture perfect and then rolls the items, puts them in bags, and makes lists of what's inside and what goes with what. The clothes aren't included in the stylist's compensation, of course, so they add another 1,000 or 10 to the vacation grand total. Although the ultra-rich travelers can afford to rent any car while traveling, not all of them like to sit in a vehicle that belongs to someone else. That's why they choose to ship their own luxurious cars to their destination. It costs around $36,000 to fly a Porsche from Dubai to London with Emirates. It's enough money to buy a brand new family hatchback in the UK, but most billionaires don't like this type of vehicle. Some wealthy travelers don't trust commercial airlines and prefer to charter a cargo plane to transport their vehicles. Sometimes they take a whole bunch of cars, motorbikes, and other expensive toys. Covered trucks in the country of destination transport all this beauty to the client's address or a garage of their choice. Owners don't like stranger delivery drivers to add miles to their shiny vehicles. This whole delivery service costs several millions. Some cars have only sentimental value for their own and are worth way less than their deluxe delivery. One really well-off man even hired a cargo plane for his Samsung TV that couldn't fit through the door of his jet. Oh, rich people's problems. They can afford to eat at any restaurant in the world, but it would be too mainstream, so they prefer to bring their private chefs on vacation. These professional cooks know their clients' diets and health goals. For luxury travelers, consistency and routine are too important to trade them for public restaurants. For chefs, it's often a chance to travel for free and get a good salary at the same time. Sometimes the clients will even fly the family of the chef with them if traveling happens over the holidays. This job has high demands and can be really stressful with varied working hours. Sometimes they have to spontaneously cook dinners for 16 people or find rare ingredients at locations with basic grocery stores. And of course, everything they overhear during meals must remain a top secret.
Are you a pro swimmer? Brave enough to take a dip in any ocean or sea? Bad news. There are some places you should avoid no matter how well you swim or dive. Some of these places have dangerous underwater rocks, strong currents and tides. Others are famous for legends about monsters and mysterious creatures. So let's dive into this aquatic horror show. Have you ever heard the word the strid? It's a variation of the word the stride that is used in Yorkshire. And it refers to a narrow section of the river wharf that's so small you could jump over it. But don't be fooled by its size, it's one of the most dangerous spots around. Even taking a step into the water can have dire consequences. The river wharf has a forceful current, and since the strid is so narrow, it's even stronger in that area. The intense water flow has eroded the limestone around the strid, which created hollow spaces much deeper than the rest of the riverbed. Here's the secret. The current has also weakened the banks of the strid from below. So, the ground you're standing on, admiring the rapid flow, is probably just a fragile ledge hanging over treacherous waters. There's no record of anyone who found themselves in the water of the strid and found their way out of it. And the worst part? You wouldn't even guess that this innocent-looking stream could be such a danger. So, my advice to you, my friend, is to stick to a safer body of water for your aquatic adventures. If you're looking for a weekend getaway in California, Horseshoe Lake is the spot for you. It's got everything. Sandy beaches, hiking trails, and picnic areas, but wait, there's more to it than meets the eye. This lake has a dark side, namely around 100 acres of dead trees that surround it. And it's not just the trees that have been claimed by this lake. The earthquakes that hit in 1989 and 1990 unleashed carbon dioxide from under the hot magma. The gas seeped out into the air, damaging all the life around the lake. Even now, Horseshoe Lake is just as dangerous as it was 30 years ago. What makes it so scary is that the levels of this toxic gas change randomly. warning signs that are posted everywhere certainly could give a horror film touch to a fun hike in the woods. In Kauai, Hawaii, there's a group of stunning waterfalls that used to be a popular destination for tourists. Kipu Falls, as they're called, were once the go-to spot for swimming and diving. To get to them, you had to take a long walk along a dirt path until you finally arrived at a breathtaking view of a 20-foot waterfall pouring into a crystal-clear pool below. But since 2011, this area has been off-limits to the public. Why, you ask? Well, there have been a lot of accidents at Kipu Falls. Obviously, jumping off the top of the waterfall would be an obvious reason for that, but in addition, there were much more mysterious cases. Witnesses tell tales of swimmers peacefully enjoying the pool at the bottom of the falls, only to be suddenly dragged under the surface. No definite explanation was found to these accidents. The locals believe that the water spirit Mo'o is to blame because it doesn't appreciate being disturbed by loud tourists. There's also a theory of a powerful whirlpool at the bottom of the pool. In any case, guide publishers do not mention Kipu Falls anymore, and trespassing is severely punished. The Samisen Hole, located in the Gulf of Thailand, is the ultimate spot for thrill-seeking divers, but it's also the most dangerous one. With a drop of 280 feet, it's the deepest diving site in the region. But its depth is not the only reason it is considered a place to avoid. The area is a major shipping zone for giant oil tankers. The strong currents around the hole make diving even more treacherous. And if that's not enough, the Samisen Hole is also home to deadly barracudas that could easily attack unsuspecting divers. The water is so murky that visibility is nearly zero, making it challenging to spot these aggressive sea creatures. All in all, the Samisen Hole is a breathtaking but extremely hazardous spot that should only be explored by experienced divers with nerves of steel. Let me tell you about New Smyrna Beach, the shark attack capital of the world. If you're looking for a relaxing vacation spot in Volusia County, Florida, you may want to reconsider this beach. The waters around New Smyrna Beach are teeming with fish, which attracts a lot of sharks. In fact, there have been so many shark attacks reported in this area that it's earned the title of the shark attack capital of the world. Even scientists have warned that if you go for a swim there, you're bound to get up close and personal with at least one of these creatures. We are talking about a distance of 10 feet, and in many cases you wouldn't even notice it. To make matters worse, the bull shark, one of the most dangerous and aggressive types of sharks, has been spotted in these waters. Once again, Kauai is on our list. The beach on Nepali coast called Hanakapiai Beach might look like heaven on earth, but don't be fooled. To get there, you have to trek through a super steep, rocky 2-mile trail. There are no lifeguards on this remote beach, so even if you decide to take a dip in the water, you're on your own. The biggest threat to your safety is the incredibly strong rip currents. They are almost always present because there are no reefs to shield the shore. And if someone gets caught in one, there's no safe place to swim to for miles. The nearest safe beach is 6 miles away. Trust me, this beach doesn't have the best track record in terms of safety, so it's highly advised that you stay out of the water if you end up at this beach. Let me tell you about a place that looks like it's straight out of a horror movie. We're talking about Berkeley Pit, which is an artificial lake situated in Butte, Montana. The first thing you'll notice about this place is that it has an eerie blood-red color that can only be described as unsettling. You might be tempted to take a dip, but that would be a grave mistake. Don't even touch it. The water is extremely dangerous due to the heavy metals present in it, such as cadmium, arsenic, zinc, lead, and copper. They come from the rocks that surround the lake and make the water super acidic. In fact, this place used to be an open-pit copper mine, hence its color. So if you want my advice, avoid this place like the plague. There are 3 lakes in Africa that maybe are the most dangerous places of all that I have mentioned so far. They're all located in Africa: Lake Monoun and Lake Nyos in Cameroon and Lake Kivu in Rwanda are all like ticking timers ready to go off. They were formed over underground pools of molten rock, and sometimes this molten rock releases toxic gases like methane and carbon dioxide right into the water. When this happens, the gases can build up until they suddenly burst out of the water, creating massive waves that can wipe out everything in their path. This type of outburst is called a limnic eruption, and it can release a cloud of poisonous gas that can be harmful to everything in the vicinity. The most terrifying part? These explosions can happen at any moment with no warning. So if you ever find yourself near one of these lakes, you'd better be on high alert, because you never know when the next accident might happen. Maybe you know other places you wouldn't recommend for a fun swim? Share your anti-recommendations in the comments below.
Mexico is huge and one of the most populated countries in the world. Over 128 million people live there. But why did more than half of them decide to pack up in this tiny strip? This area in the center of the country makes up only 18% of Mexico, and the locals have been living there for centuries. All because it seems to be the only livable place in the country. To the north, there are hot, dry deserts. Let's face it, it may be pretty hard to survive in such climatic conditions. To the south, there are jungles, and those are nightmarish. Jungles are warm and wet, so they might trick you into thinking that they'll be a cozy home for you. But it's very hard to build anything in them. The concrete won't dry because of awful unstoppable rains, and the heat messes up asphalt roads. This is why there are only 8 paved roads through the southern jungles connecting Mexico to Central America. Roads are crucial for proper life. More roads mean better and cheaper transportation, which helps people trade, do business, and make more money. But jungles have even bigger problems than just a lack of roads. Farming. Most of the nutrients in the jungle are in the plants, old wood, and decaying leaves. When these things decay, they become McDonald's-level meals for insects, fungi, and bacteria. They immediately start recycling the nutrients so fast that almost none reach the soil. With no nutrients, the soil becomes barren and useless. Oh, and we still need to clear the jungles from time to time, otherwise they may become impossible to get through. People do that by using slash and burn methods. Because of this, they often end up with poor soil that needs lots of fertilizers to grow crops. And don't forget about the ever-present jungle pests. These guys pounce on the crops, and no amount of pesticides can get rid of them forever. To make matters even worse, nearly 70% of Mexico is located in the mountains. It's one of the most mountainous countries in the world, similar to Switzerland. And mountains, just like rain, do everything in their power to prevent humanity from thriving. Building infrastructure there is nearly impossible. It requires tons of money and labor compared to flatlands. And they also make transportation between these valleys and to the coast much more challenging. Now, imagine mountains combined with the jungles. Exactly. But hold on a minute. Isn't the central strip of Mexico filled with the highest mountains in the country? This area is packed with plateaus and valleys and sits at elevations of 7,000 feet or more. This is as high as a ski resort in Aspen, Colorado. Then why in the world does everyone still live here? Turns out, these are actually good mountains. Since they're so high, they block the hotness of the desert and the tropical zones. This way, they create cooler, drier, and more temperate climates. The soil here is super fertile and great for farming, all because of the plot twist. Many of the surrounding mountains are actually volcanoes. Volcanoes, while scary, can also be super useful. They've been erupting for millions of years, and when they do that, they mix rich minerals into the soil. They're like natural fertilizer. So the land here is perfect for growing crops, especially calorie-heavy grains like corn. That's why we get so much corn or maize from Mexico. Also, many volcanic areas have natural hot springs where people can relax and enjoy a warm soak. Finally, mountains help reduce the spread of viruses and insects. This is one of the reasons why Mesoamerica became one of the first cradles of civilization in history. Thousands of years ago, the ancient city of Teotihuacan thrived here. This city reached a population of at least 125,000 people, bigger than Monaco or Liechtenstein. It was one of the largest cities in the world at the time. Back in the days of the Aztec Empire, this area was home to 5 large lakes and many rivers that provided tons of fresh water for farming. Also, people used boats to transport goods. This boosted trading and cultural growth. But living in the mountains still isn't perfect. Only about 12% of Mexico's land is good for farming, so mostly people farm in the central volcanic valleys, where they've lived for centuries. Also, because the elevation is so high, the rivers flow from the mountains to the ocean. Gravity plays its tricks, and the currents accelerate and become stronger. Because of this, there's no cheap river transport between Mexico City and the ocean. The rivers are too dangerous for the ships. Instead, people have to rely on more expensive methods like roads, railways, and airplanes. Veracruz used to be the local star port. It was the only safe and calm place on the Gulf of Mexico. Since it was the only natural harbor for miles along Mexico's flat coastline, it was super important. Not only for locals, but also a hot target for invaders. And while mountains could keep Mexico's heartland kinda safe, protecting coastal areas was harder because of them. Connecting Veracruz to Mexico City was a massive headache. And don't forget that living near volcanoes is still scary. Every now and then they throw temper tantrums and start spewing lava, ash, and smoke everywhere. This is extremely dangerous, so locals have to evacuate to keep everyone safe. One famous volcanic event happened in 1943 with the Paricutin volcano. Imagine a farmer's surprise when a volcano suddenly erupted right in his cornfield. The volcano grew rapidly and buried 2 villages in lava and ash. Most people managed to evacuate in time, but not all of them. Another dramatic event was the eruption of El Chichon in 1982. This eruption was a big surprise and caused a lot of destruction. Finally, there's Popocatépetl volcano. In the Aztec language, this means smoking mountain. People affectionately call it El Popo. This volcano is still active and quite close to Mexico City. El Popo frequently lets off steam and ash, reminding everyone that it's very much alive. And living near El Popo means always being prepared that something might happen. Also, the reason why volcanoes are there is because the local tectonic plates are pretty active. The ground likes to move, which means that earthquakes aren't a rare occasion here either. Well, at least the climate on the Central Strip is nice, so modern construction materials like concrete and asphalt thrive here. Finally, we can build some roads, right? Oops, never mind. Because of the elevation, the locals only managed to build the first railroad in the 19th century. Meanwhile, the US had already built over 50,000 miles of tracks at the time. Can you imagine? Since Mexico is like a jigsaw puzzle of separate valleys, it's very tricky to build roads and railways through the mountains. Basically, there are no cheap ways to move goods in the country. But a few cities found a way to thrive outside the Central Strip. Chihuahua is one of the largest cities in Mexico, and it's doing pretty well. They boast good automotive and electronics industries. That's probably because it's connected to the US border, which really helps trading. Hermosillo is also located in the desert, but luckily it's right near the Gulf of California, so the temperatures aren't that awful. Plus, it helps marine trading. In this city, they even made up some advanced irrigation techniques that make the desert bloom. Also, Hermosillo is a major center for the aerospace industry. However, Mexico City still remains the life center in the country, and it's one of the world's largest megacities, with over 22 million people. But it's hard for the central government in Mexico City to control this puzzle of a country. Trading between the central valleys and the northern deserts or southern jungles is very tough, and supporting the economy may be sort of frustrating.
Now, the next time you travel the world on Google Maps, check out this lake in Finland that is shaped just like the country itself. This lake was modified by humans in the north of the country and is an exact model of the country on a 1 to 10,000 scale. In the 1980s, Arctic tourism and skiing above the Arctic Circle was booming. A local company decided to build a hotel and plenty of holiday cabins here. The pond, shaped like Finland, was supposed to bring more tourists to the area. They managed to finish it in just 1 week with 2 excavators, a tape measure, and a few sticks. And I must say, they did a great job. If you don't like long elevators, head to Hanover, Germany. One of the outdoor elevators there only travels for a few inches, and the whole experience takes a few seconds. It has become a real star on social media after some tourists posted footage of it, so you might have to wait in line to enjoy your short ride. In case you're wondering what's the point of this elevator, well, it's installed at the local train station. Every inch counts when you're traveling with heavy luggage or have limited mobility, so it's a good way to navigate within the station. Gummy bear fans, you might want to know that your favorite chewy treat has enough energy in it to start a fire show. If you drop 1 gummy bear into an ignition tube with a small amount of molten potassium or sodium chlorate in it, it will quickly disappear in a ball of fire with an impressive fume cloud. First, potassium chlorate melts. Then the melted potassium chlorate breaks down and releases oxygen. The sugar in the gummy bear burns quickly, turning into carbon dioxide and water, which gives off a lot of energy. After everything cools down, you can look at what's left. The black stuff is unburned carbon, the white solid is potassium chloride, and the caramel-looking stuff is partially burned sugar. So we only have 6 muscles in our outer ear, and cats have an impressive 32. That's why they can rotate their ears 180 degrees and use them to show their current mood. If you see the ears are upright and facing forward, you have one happy cat. If the ears are rotated to the sides, sort of like airplane wings, or angled backward, your kitty must be really stressed or afraid of something. Ears held low or rotated to the sides could be a sign the cat is sick, so watch out for those. A stray dog in Brazil got a job as a professional car consultant at a local Hyundai dealership. The company manager noticed a stray pup next to the dealership and started leaving food and water for his new friend. Other staff members also fell in love with the pup and finally decided to adopt him. The doggy got a home, a job, and the name Tucson after Hyundai's popular compact SUV. Tucson's job includes wearing a tie, getting behind the wheel, and winning over the hearts of customers. You can see from the company's social media that he excels at all these tasks. In Mexico, they like to spice up mango and citrus fruits with salt and chili pepper. You can try mango with a shrimp taste in the Philippines and salted watermelon in the southern states. When you're eating a sweet fruit sprinkled with salt, you'll notice the salty flavor with the first bite, and the sweet fruity taste follows a bit later. And when you get used to it, it feels as juicy and amazing as ever. It's most likely because salt affects the sweet taste receptor for sugar, and then the real magic happens on a molecular level. You can try and put salt on any fruit you like, but the effect will be different. Salt can make sweeter fruits like cherries and strawberries even sweeter and balance the flavor of grapefruit, pineapple, and watermelon. Now back in 1956, long before the first dating apps were a thing, or apps in general, a Swedish sailor named Ake Viking decided to ask the sea for help to find a soulmate. He put a short message to someone beautiful and far away in a bottle and let it travel the world. 2 years later, he received a reply from a girl named Paulina from Sicily. She wrote that she wasn't really beautiful, but she thought it was super cool that the bottle had covered such a huge distance. That's why she decided to let the sender know she had found it. Well, they became pen pals, and after a while, you guessed it, Viking moved to Sicily to marry his one and only Paulina. That unique pattern on your fingertips stays with you for your entire life. If you happen to damage your fingerprint somehow, or develop some skin condition that can change them, they'll still grow back within a month. As you grow older, the skin on your fingertips becomes less elastic and the ridges get thicker, but the pattern still doesn't change. It just becomes harder to scan. If you work as a bricklayer, though, or have to handle certain chemicals, you might lose some details in your beautiful natural pattern. But no worries, once you stop doing those activities, you'll get your fingertips back. Unless maybe you're a meat cutter. If you still believe in the 5-second rule, there's some bad news for you. When your food hits the floor, it instantly becomes a bacteria magnet. Researchers discovered that moisture, surface type, and contact time all play a role in how badly contaminated your food will get. Food with high moisture levels, like juicy watermelon, are more likely to get in trouble fast. In a different study, researchers swabbed the floors around the University of Illinois in a lab, hall, dormitory, and cafeteria to see how many organisms they could find. Even on dry, sterile surfaces, germs relocated onto cookies and gummy bears in less than 5 seconds. For some foods, it took less than 1 second for the transfer to begin. The first Barbie doll was made in 1959, but her great-great-great-grandmother comes from ancient Rome. Archaeologists found some incredible sarcophagi during construction work in Rome in the 19th century. One of those had a 9-inch long doll next to its owner. The head and body were made from a single piece of ivory. Its arms and legs were separate and connected with a clever nail mechanism, allowing them to move. Its face was so detailed that it looked like a tiny portrait. The doll even wore a tiny gold ring with a key on its finger and had a small ivory box full of jewels, tiny mirrors, bone combs, and the remnants of accessories. But Ken was nowhere to be found. In case you're looking for a new job and you love to cuddle, there might be an opening for you. As weird as it sounds, a professional snuggler is a real job. There are several companies that provide cuddling services and look for staff members who are ready to give hugs and snuggles and listen and support people who really need it. Now, anyone can give hugs to others, but you need to be trained in professional cuddling to make money out of it. You will need to learn to set boundaries with your future clients without hurting their feelings and to mentally care for others without giving away too much of your own personality. Famous scientist Nikola Tesla knew that the whole world would go wireless back in 1900. He mentioned that devices no larger than a watch would be able to transfer signals precisely. Back then, it was a revolutionary idea the scientist got while conducting experiments at one of his labs. Tesla was so confident about the success of his idea that he even convinced famous banker J.P. Morgan to invest money in his project. The World Wireless System involved a tower shaped like a mushroom on the shores of Long Island. It was supposed to transmit messages, phone calls, and images to ships across the Atlantic Ocean. Sadly, because of financial issues, the tower was never finished. Oh well, it all turned out now, didn't it? A new super-Earth has been spotted by astronomers, and it's quite intriguing. This planet, called TOI 715b, is about 1.5 the size of Earth, which is why it's called the super-Earth. It's also relatively close to us in space terms, only 137 light-years away. For comparison, most exoplanets are hundreds of light-years away, and all the interesting stuff, like black holes and nebulas, are usually more than thousands of light-years away from us. So, could it be habitable? The habitable zone is an estimate of where a planet might have the right conditions for liquid water. This is what we call some distance from the star, where the temperatures on the planet should be okay-ish, and water should stay liquid on its surface. It's not super precise, because it depends on a bunch of factors like the type of star, how reflective the planet is, its size, and so on. Also, just being in this zone isn't enough for water to actually be there. The planet also needs the right kind of atmosphere and a few other things. So, we invented a stricter definition in 2014, the conservative habitable zone. It's a more precise term defining the best candidates that have liquid water. Otherwise, we get too many potentially habitable planets that are not actually habitable at all. The CHZ is based on how much energy a planet gets from its star compared to Earth. If a rocky planet gets between 40 to 85%, it's considered to be in the CHZ, no matter how far away it is from its star. These planets have a higher chance of being habitable. And yes, TOI 715b is located there. This super-Earth orbits the M-type star, also called red dwarf. It's a star that's much smaller and cooler than our Sun, about a quarter of the Sun's size and mass. But if the planet is located in the habitable zone, it's actually a better option for life. Red dwarfs live much longer than our Sun, a yellow dwarf. This also means that they have more time to form little creatures on their planets. And this red dwarf really is older than our star. Our Sun is 4.6 billion years old, and this star is 6.6 billion years old, give or take a few hundred million. It doesn't have much magnetic activity, so it's not dangerous. It doesn't flare up like younger red dwarfs. These flares can be super strong and might even hurt planets by taking away their atmospheres. Although some planets around it do have thinner atmospheres, it seems like this red dwarf has already gone all out. These red dwarfs are where we're looking for planets that could support life right now. Our super-Earth is really close to its star, zooming around it in just 19 days. Since the star is small and the planet is so close, the planet passing in front of its star happens a lot and looks really clear. This makes it easy for telescopes like the James Webb to study its atmosphere without needing too much time. Now, speaking of the James Webb Space Telescope, it's bringing us into a new era of understanding distant planets beyond our solar system. Imagine being able to see what gases make up the air on a planet millions of light years away. James Webb will help us to find worlds that could support life. Right now, it's trying to figure out whether TOI 715b has an atmosphere. If it does, its atmosphere might be easier to spot compared to a planet that's drier and denser. And then we might get even more hyped because it would look like a good place for life. On top of all that, there might be another planet in this system, also in the habitable zone. We're not sure whether it's really there, it's just a candidate with a crazy name. But if it turns out to be real, it would be about the size of Earth. Also, it would be the smallest planet in the habitable zone ever spotted by the TESS telescope. Now, another cool thing about TOI 715b is that it cannot just have water on it, but be an entire water world. An ocean planet is a type of planet that has an ocean covering its surface or has subsurface oceans. They might not have much dry land because the water can cover everything. Sometimes the entire planet can be covered in other liquids, like lava or ammonia. When it comes to planets outside our solar system, we can't see surface water directly with our current technology. Instead, scientists look for water vapor in the atmosphere as a hint there might be liquid water below. And of course, we wonder if these planets can have life, hopefully not in the form of Leviathan-like monsters. Our models show that planets with oceans might be pretty common in our galaxy. This means there could be lots of ocean worlds out there waiting to be discovered. But the most important part about TOI 715b is that it's in the so-called small planet radius gap. If we give the planets a lineup, there will be those that are bigger and smaller than Earth. But there's a sudden gap in planets that are about from 1.5 to 2 times bigger than ours. Where are they? This gap is interesting to scientists because it tells us something about how planets form and change over time. It's not that planets don't form in this size range. They actually start off larger and then lose some of their mass, like a balloon gradually deflating. Perhaps it happens because of how they orbit their stars, with stars blowing away some of their mass as they dance around it, as our Sun does with gas from comet tails. This gap holds a lot of mystery, and planets, like our new super-Earth, are clues that could help us unravel it. We aren't sure whether it exists around red dwarfs. Maybe it's a gap in how dense these planets are, rather than in their actual size. So studying our discovered planet is even more interesting. It'll help us learn more about distant stars and their planets. Now, I mentioned TESS a while back. NASA's TESS, Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, has been in space for 6 years now and has been incredibly successful. NASA launched TESS because we already found over 5,000 planets orbiting other stars, mainly thanks to the Kepler telescope. But Kepler mostly found large planets, not necessarily like Earth. We decided to focus TESS on finding smaller Earth-like planets around nearby bright stars, making them easier to study with future telescopes. Here's how it works. The camera observes stars and looks for changes in their brightness. If the brightness suddenly drops for a while and then gets back, it could mean there is a planet passing in front of it. But stars can dim for other reasons too. For example, flaring up or having dark spots on their surface, which is why we need to be careful with this data. TESS shows us the size and orbit of these planets. Then ground telescopes help determine their mass. With these three parameters, we can figure out what the planets are made of and if they're rocky like Earth or gassy like Jupiter. Yeah, you want to avoid Jupiter after taco night. One example of TESS's discoveries was the TOI 700 system. There, it discovered its first ever Earth-like planet, TOI 700d. This exoplanet also orbited a red dwarf, and it's even closer to us, about 100 light-years away. Unfortunately, it's unlikely to be habitable because the temperatures there are crazy. Another big discovery was made in the AU microscopy system. TESS discovered a planet about 4 times the size of Earth and another nearly 3 times Earth's size. This system has become a key area for studying how stars and planets form and change over time. TESS has also spotted a variety of other exciting finds, including supernova, hot worlds, and so on. And as it enters its 6th year, we can only expect more exciting findings to come. Around 2,500 years ago, an earthquake completely changed the course of one of the largest and most famous rivers on the planet, the Ganges. Now, it's normal for rivers not to sit in one place, so if you live next to one, it could also just disappear without a trace or flood the whole city one day. In the case of the Ganges River, a supermassive earthquake became the reason for this dramatic change. Scientists say it might happen again, and it would be a huge problem for millions of people who depend on this river. The Ganges River starts as small streams in the Himalayas and travels a long way, over 1,500 miles. Along its journey, it meets other big rivers before all the water flows into the Bay of Bengal. The Ganges has the largest delta in the world among all rivers. Just like many other rivers in the region, it slowly changes its path over time. These changes, if they happen when a river wears away its banks, usually takes a long time, sometimes decades. Scientists have discovered that the Ganges-Brahmaputra river system has shifted several times over the last 6,000 years. When they looked at satellite images of the Ganges Delta, they noticed something interesting. There was a crescent-shaped dip in the ground about 28 miles away from where the river is flowing now. This depression was over 1 mile wide and stretched for many miles. They thought it might have been an old main channel of the Ganges River a long time ago. In 2018, the team decided to visit the area to check it out for themselves and take samples to learn more about it. While driving back home, they noticed a pit where someone was digging dirt to create a pond. The next day, they planned to fill it with water, but the researchers spotted something strange in the dirt. There were vertical bands of light-colored sand mixed into the darker mud. These special layers are clues from the past. They show that an ancient earthquake made sand and water shoot up from below the ground and created sand volcanoes that were trapped in time. The scientists studied the sand and mud and figured out that these earthquakes happened around 2,500 years ago and were strong, with magnitudes of 7 to 8. The epicenter was over 110 miles away from the main stem of the river, but it was powerful enough to displace it. It could have affected around 140 million people. The Ganges-Brahmaputra system is close to spots where Earth's tectonic plates meet, so earthquakes happen here often. There's no danger right now, but scientists think that another massive earthquake could happen in the next few hundred or thousand years. It could threaten up to 170 million people. That's about half the population of the U.S. No one can predict exactly when an earthquake will happen or how strong it will be. Learning how earthquakes in the past moved rivers helps scientists figure out patterns and make guesses about similar events in the future. This knowledge could help us prepare better and create safety plans before another big earthquake strikes. Now, the Ganges isn't the only river at risk. The Yellow River, the Irrawaddy River, and rivers in the United States, like the Klamath and San Joaquin, all face similar dangers. The mighty Mississippi River has also switched its path many times over the last 7,000 years. Right now, there's a huge system of dams and barriers called a control structure in central Louisiana. This structure's job is to stop the Mississippi from spilling over its banks and joining a nearby river. But scientists think that, in theory, these barriers wouldn't handle mega floods. So, the Mississippi could break free and change its course again. This would cause massive problems, especially in southern Louisiana. One of the recent examples when a river changing its course caused disaster was the Kosi River in India. In August 2008, over just a few days, the river's path shifted by almost 60 miles, which is a huge change. Floods happen in some parts of the state rather often, but they hadn't seen such strong ones in over 50 years. They affected around 1,000 villages and 3 million people, and about 1 million people had to be evacuated to safety. Since many of these people hadn't faced floods in so long, they weren't ready to handle it quickly. It caused even more damage to their homes and lives. Scientists have been trying for decades to figure out what exactly makes rivers suddenly change their course. A new study explains that two things work together to make a river to do it. This process is called avulsion. First, there's the setup, which is like building up tension before something big happens. Over time, sediment, sand, dirt, and other stuff carried by the river gets deposited in certain places. It either raises the river above the land around it or makes a nearby slope steeper than the river's current path. Then there's the trigger, which is like the final straw that makes everything happen. This trigger could be a big flood, an earthquake, or even something like a pile of logs blocking the water. Now, researchers looked at satellite images of about 170 cases of avulsion from the past 50 years. They noticed these events happen most often near river mouths and near mountains. Rivers were about 3 times more likely to change course in these places than in the areas between them. They also studied 58 river channels in detail, using super clear maps to measure super elevation. That's how high the river is compared to the land around it. They also measured slope advantage. That's how steep a new path might be compared to the river's current one. They found that near mountains, rivers often pile up so much sediment that they become super elevated and spill over. But near river mouths, like in deltas, rivers need a steep slope advantage to break through the mud and form a new path. These two factors work together like a seesaw. If one is stronger, the other doesn't need to be as strong for an avulsion to happen. To figure out where a river might go if it changes course, the researchers created a smart computer algorithm. This tool uses maps to measure the terrain's steepness and the river's flow to predict where the river might move. They tested it on 10 past avulsions, and it correctly guessed the path every single time. Scientists hope they could use these findings to protect people living near rivers from sudden floods. Rivers changing course played a big role in creating one of the first organized administration systems in the world. Scientists found clues for this in the territory of ancient Mesopotamia. This name means the land between two rivers, and it was between the rivers Tigris and the Euphrates. People living there relied on these rivers for water, food, and transportation. Scientists wanted to figure out how these sudden changes in these rivers affected ancient people. To do this, they used two kinds of maps. The archaeological maps show how ancient cities grew over time, including what types of buildings people built. Certain buildings, like big palaces or city walls, could show when each city first had an organized administration. The second kind of map showed where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers flowed long ago. They often shifted, sometimes slowly, and sometimes very quickly and dramatically. Around the year 5000 BCE, Mesopotamia started to become drier and farming became harder. Farmers had to grow their crops near rivers, where they could use the natural floods to water their fields or dig little channels to bring river water to their plants. Because farming was so important, towns and cities grew near the rivers too, so people could stay close to their food. But when a river suddenly changed its course, people didn't give up. They worked together to dig long canals to bring water from the new river path back to their fields. The canals helped them get water again, and the administration building showed they were organizing as a community to solve big problems together.